Hello all, I hope you're all doing well. We're continuing with our weekly portion review, and this week we are in the portion of Vayakhel, which is translated into "and he assembled." We are continuing with the construction of temple. And last year we really explored the theme of co-creation in the construction of the tabernacle, and then we were highlighting how human participation in the divine plan is central to its realization ultimately. And in these final Torah portions of the book of Exodus, the focus really shifts towards the aesthetic dimension, as we've been seeing, right? The intricate details of beauty as Bezalel, the craftsman, is working, and we have the artistic expression of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, in its construction. Now, with this shift, we need to ask a question, a deeper question, which is why do many of us actually feel uneasy about beauty? And we have to realize that our nation really endured centuries of exile. There was intellectual abstraction, and which included, of course, philosophical growth as well. And these experiences have really profoundly shaped our worldview. And often they lead us to distrust or undervalue the role of beauty in our lives. Now, this difficult history, combined with our a strong emphasis on rationality and the moral development, really accustomed many of us to see aesthetics as secondary, and maybe even as we look about it as like frivolous sometimes. Now, as a result of this, I'll say we look at ideas of beauty as childish, superficial, and they're really a distraction from higher pursuits. However, in reality, right, beauty is not an indulgence. It's actually it's like a battlefield. It's really a domain where the intellect can't dismiss the imagination. It really needs to refine it, subdue it, ultimately integrate it into a higher order of meaning. Rabbi Kook explains that in the early stages of human spiritual development, the power of imagination was so dominant and therefore was often misused and misdirected towards idolatry. Now, this impulse wasn't necessarily or inherently negative, it just needed to be refined. Over time, through divine guidance, we were drawn away from the distortion and towards the service of Hashem, God. We see in the Passover Seder, "V'kelvotenu lavodatecha," and you have drawn us near to your service. Now, this statement really highlights the transformation and the process we went through of elevating the lower tendencies of human nature, not through suppression, rather through refinement and sanctification. Now, the goal is not to abandon the body or the inherent forces in it, but rather really to harness them and to uplift them towards divine service, right? Now, this idea is really beautifully reflected in this week's portion, where when the construction reaches completion, in Exodus 36:13, we say, "V'hi Mishkan echad," and the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was one. The unity of the Mishkan is not just the structural, physical unity. It really represents an integration of all dimensions of life: the spiritual, the physical, the intellectual, and of course the aesthetic. The rational and the imaginative are there as well, building this thing together. Now, beauty, far from being a superficial embellishment, right, is really part of the ultimate divine synthesis, right, where we elevate the material world into the house of God, the dwelling place of Hashem. And so rather than viewing beauty with suspicion, we should really recognize it as an integral part of our spiritual mission. And one that requires discipline and responsibility and refinement, but one that ultimately draws us closer towards holiness. I am fortunate to partake in building and designing homes, and this is something I very much try to convey to my clients, that this is a process that we could do together. And even the process of spending money on beautiful things, if done properly, can be oriented towards higher purposes. Shabbat shalom, and take care.